In Part 2, we look at some of the causes of child behaviour problems. These include our children's genetic makeup, the family environment, and influences from the wider community around them. We also look at monitoring, or how to keep track of children's behaviour. All children inherit a unique genetic makeup. Along with physical features like the colour of their eyes and skin, children may also inherit their temperament from their parents.
Some children are very sociable and outgoing and like to talk a lot. Others are more active, they're on the go, they're very busy and have a high activity level. And others are more emotional and find it hard to accept change. Differences in temperament in the early years can be related to whether or not children go on to develop behavioural or emotional problems. However, it's important to remember one thing. Not all difficult babies develop problem behaviour, and some easy babies do. Obviously, there are other things that we need to take into account. Sometimes children's health can affect how they behave. They may seem to be misbehaving or not doing as they're told, when actually they may not be able to hear properly when we ask them to do something. They may have hearing problems or ear infections. If children aren't eating well, they may not have the energy to listen, learn and do as they're told. We also need to watch for illnesses. Children may act differently and seem more difficult when they're sick.
As parents, we can't change our children's genetic makeup. However, we do have some control over what happens in our families. There are important things that happen in homes that can influence whether or not children develop behaviour problems. In trying to understand children's behaviour, it's helpful to have some understanding about how they learn. This can be useful in deciding how to deal with problem behaviour.
Many behaviour difficulties in children relate to the day-to-day interactions between them, their parents and their siblings. There are several ways that children can learn misbehaviour. The first is accidental rewards.
An accidental reward can happen when children get what they want by misbehaving.
No. Through this aisle, one go, James.
Chocolate.
No.
Yes.
No chocolate. Put it
I
back.
want it. Mum, can I get this?
For example, buying a toy for a child who's nagging during a shopping trip.
Too much to do today, James. We're doing groceries. We are not doing toys.
But
I don't
I
care.
want it.
No.
Yes.
Oh, all right. Good heavens, just stop the whinging, all right?
When behaviour like this gets results, it's more likely to happen again.
Yes. Mum.
Another accidental reward can be attention. If we pay attention to behaviour like this, giving our attention can encourage it. Or if we laugh or smile at what they do, we may accidentally give our child a message that the behaviour is funny and it's okay, when really it's not.
What we have to ask ourselves is how much attention do our children get for behaviour that we don't like happening? A second cause of behaviour problems is what we call the escalation trap. This is a situation where a child wants something, and if they're being ignored, they learn to turn up the volume. They become more insistent, demanding and louder. And right at the point when they're at their worst, they've become really upset and angry, a parent perhaps says, "Okay, have it, just take it, but just stop that yelling." Now, what is the child learning in that situation? It's when they don't get what they want, they need to escalate to get what they want.
Parents can also be caught in the escalation trap. Here's how it works. Say a parent asks their children to turn off the television.
It's 5 o'clock, your show's over, it's time for your shower now, guys.
The children refuse.
Boys, I said it's 5 o'clock, the music's playing, it's time for your shower now.
The parent gets louder and may even threaten them.
I said it's 5 o'clock, now go and have your shower now.
And when the parent is well and truly angry, the children give in.
So what is the parent learning in that situation? Hey, the only way I can get my child to cooperate is to yell and shout at them.
Children can learn to misbehave because parents don't pay enough attention to them when they're behaving well.
Mum, look what I've done. I've swept up all of these leaves.
Oh, love, this is the inside broom. This is what we use for the wooden floors on the inside, not for the pavers. Look, this is the straw one that we use for the pavers on the outside for the leaves, not this one. Look at it.
Oh, sorry.
So a child can learn that the only way to get some attention or to get a reaction is to misbehave.
Children also learn a great deal about their world and how to behave through watching others.
There are many different sorts of behaviours that children can pick up by watching others: swearing, losing your temper, hitting and hurting, yelling and screaming, or how to react when something's scary or frightening around you. For example, if a child hears mum and dad yell and shout and then get their own way through that tactic, what is the child learning? They're learning, hey, this works. This is a strategy that I can use to get my own way. And so what you often find in families where there are adults who yell and shout a lot, there's often similar behaviour in their children. The way we give instructions to children can also influence their behaviour. For example, sometimes we may simply give too many instructions. Every time an instruction is given, there's an opportunity for children to be disobedient. Also, if instructions are given so quickly the child doesn't have a chance to follow them or can't remember them all, then problems occur.
Sometimes the opposite can cause a problem when our children receive too few instructions.
Okay, Bridge, quick, honey, you've got to pack your stuff up. We've got to get to Nan's. I'll go and load the car. Quickly, get your stuff together.
If we're not clear about what we expect, it's harder for them to learn what they have to do.
Okay, Bridge. Oh, look at this mess. We're not going for 6 months, we're going for one night. Now all you need is a toothbrush, your pyjamas, and you can take one special toy. Now quickly. Bridget, honey, can you help Mum just take that up the stairs for me?
We can also expect too much of children when we give them instructions that are too hard.
Another reason children can have problems is if instructions are poorly timed. For example, if a child is watching their favourite TV program or in the middle of a game, that's probably not a good time to ask them to do something that could actually wait until later.
Jonathan, I'd like you to tidy up your room now, please.
TV's not finished yet.
We can also be too vague.
Oh, Ellie, don't be silly.
Such a vague instruction doesn't tell the child what to stop doing, nor does it tell the child what's appropriate. There's a similar problem if we phrase an instruction as a question.
For example, if you say, "Would you like to come and have a bath now, dear?" That's expressing an instruction as a question. You need to be prepared in that situation for your child to say, "No thanks, Mum." Sometimes our body language can give a message that's different from the instruction we're giving. For example, if we tell a child to stop doing something, but at the same time we're laughing at what they're doing, the child is getting a very mixed message. Are they supposed to stop or not?
No, I've had enough.
Also, if we give instructions that we call long-distance instructions, that is, the parent is just too far away from the child, they're less likely to do as they've been asked, particularly if the instruction is shouted from way over the other side of the room or from another room.
The event in my life is stressful at the moment.
Emotional messages mean that we focus on the child being a problem rather than the child's behaviour.
For God's sakes, Angus. Why don't you scream and shout and show off again? Hey, there's a little audience of kids here. They're all going to laugh at you.
Name-calling, abuse, or trying to make our children feel guilty can make them resentful and uncooperative.
I'm taking the cars, they're going in the bin. Both of you, go in your rooms.
One of the most important reasons that children develop difficult behaviour is the way in which parents use discipline. If parents punish their children without using strategies to encourage desirable behaviour, the relationship between parents and children can really suffer, and children's behaviour can get worse. Some kinds of punishment can actually cause other problems to develop. For example, shouting and yelling at children frequently leads to arguments and an escalation of behaviour. Smacking or spanking your child can also teach them to be aggressive.
Threatening a consequence and not following through is a particular problem.
That's it, Ellie. I'm not going to tell you again. If you don't stop blowing those bubbles, I'm going to take that drink away.
If there are no backup consequences, children will often learn to ignore a parent's request. Another problem is when we deal with misbehaviour when we are angry. There's always a risk of losing control and hurting a child.
Parents can also wait too long before they do something about a problem. They may use discipline at the last minute as a response to a crisis.
Sometimes parents wait until their child's behaviour has become intolerable before doing something about it. Then we can overreact with the risk of hurting our child. A final problem is being inconsistent. For example, when instructions or rules are not backed up or enforced, or when parents contradict each other in front of their children.
For you to keep saying, oh, well, you just have to be firmer with them.
When things are inconsistent and unpredictable, children's behaviour is often more difficult to manage.
I can't believe this.
It's also important to remember that our own beliefs, attitudes and expectations of children can influence our parenting.
Yes, it's been one of those days for me too. No, Bridget's been in trouble in preschool again. No, just not following anything the teacher has to say. She's been doing that for weeks. No, I'm not worried about it. I think it's just a phase. Most kids do it, don't they?
When in fact, it's the sort of behaviour that needs to be dealt with so it doesn't turn into a more difficult problem later on.
Guys, you're not ready. You've done it again. You do it deliberately every single time. I'm going to be late. Look, all the time, deliberately. Well, thank you very much.
This can create a lot of resentment and lead us as parents to overreact in a situation we might otherwise have dealt with more calmly. It may also stop parents from looking at how their own actions contribute to problem behaviour and what the child needs to be taught.
Everyone else seems to be able to cope. I don't understand how they do it. How come I'm such a hopeless parent? I can't seem to get anything right as a parent. No matter what I do, it's always wrong.
This can make parents feel guilty and depressed. And of course, when you're feeling that way, it's much more difficult to be patient, calm and consistent with your child. Children need a warm, loving, caring environment. However, some children grow up in family situations where there's a lot of tension and fighting between their mum and dad. When children experience this, it can be distressing for them and it can definitely influence their behaviour. They can become more aggressive, more anxious or even more depressed.
How parents feel can also influence children's behaviour. If a parent is feeling depressed, exhausted, angry, anxious or upset, it's much more difficult to be calm, patient, consistent and relaxed about parenting.
Stress is part of everyday life. All of us have to deal with problems from time to time, but children need routine and stress in the family can disrupt normal routines. If you have serious or long-standing problems with feelings, stress or relationships, do something about it and be prepared to seek professional advice.
All influences on children's behaviour don't happen in the home. Their relationship with friends, difficulties with learning or school in general can also cause problem behaviour. There's also what they read, see or hear in the media, and that includes television, movies and what they access on computers. It's up to us as parents to monitor what they're reading and watching.
Now that you've looked at possible causes of behaviour problems, it's time to think about goals for change in both your own and your child's behaviour.
Choose only one or two problems to work on at any one time. State goals positively so that they'll tell you what you want your child to do. For example, if your child runs away during shopping trips, set a goal for your child to walk with you in the shops. Make sure that your goals are reasonable and achievable. Before you start a new parenting plan, keep track of the behaviour you want to change.
One way to keep track involves keeping a diary, recording when the problem occurred, what happened just before the problem, in other words, what was the trigger to the problem, and what happened afterwards. How did you deal with the problem? Another way of keeping track is to record how often a behaviour occurs. This simply means counting the number of times a behaviour happens. You can record it on a chart or a tally sheet like this. You can put the information on a graph to keep track of your child's progress. Keep track like this for a week or so before you start a new parenting plan. And remember to continue to keep track once you've started the plan. This will help you notice any improvements and will keep you motivated to persist with the strategy.
As well as how to keep track of your child's behaviour, the section we've just seen looked at some of the causes of child behaviour problems. We saw that there are many influences on children's behaviour, including their genetic makeup, the family environment, and community influences.